Tonight we're going to take a look back in time at a moment that shook Green Country to its core. 3 Girl Scouts brutally murdered at a camp near Locust Grove, and it remains an unsolved case.
We're coming up on 40 years since that tragic summer. It touched so many, including a member of our Channel 8 family. Our investigative reporter Maureen Wards tells us for some it's like it happened yesterday. That's tonight's Channel 8 Close-Up.
And everybody agreed that somebody was there watching and had picked out these children.
The victims, who had arrived at Camp Scott only last night, were identified as 9-year-old Michelle Goose of Broken Arrow, 8-year-old Lori Lee Farmer of Tulsa, and 10-year-old Denise Milner, also of Tulsa. All were members of the same Girl Scout troop. All 3 were asleep in a tent like this one in the Kiowa encampment on the 425-acre grounds.
The thick canopy outside the town of Locust Grove is lush and beautiful. It's the very picture of why we call it Green Country. There's an old gravel road here. You can easily miss it if you don't know the place. But make the turn and within a mile or so, there it is, the gates of what used to be Camp Scott.
We would say between 2 to 4 o'clock this morning.
Did anybody else hear anything, Pete?
No one.
In June of 1977, this was the summer camp for scores of Oklahoma Girl Scouts, the place where parents brought their daughters for their first big sleepaway adventure. Now, it's a place of painful memories.
But when you're living through it, it's real. And you can't escape it.
Today, the pictures of the smiling girl next to Betty Milner are starting to show their age. The 40-year-old paper would crumble if she grabbed it too tightly, but the images of the child in bows and pigtails have become her life raft and proof that her daughter Denise existed.
I had to see tangible evidence that she did exist, because somebody think I couldn't have had that child and something that horrible happened, you know.
No one could have predicted the horrors that took place at Camp Scott. And even when the brutal murders dominated the nightly news on Channel 8.
June 13th, 1977. 3 Girl Scouts found brutally raped and beaten to death at Camp Scott.
It seemed unreal.
Parents of the returning girls line both sides of the street by the Girl Scout office here in Tulsa.
Even for those parents whose children were untouched.
The parents were advised not to discuss the incident with anyone outside the Girl Scout office or the circle of parents. None of them would speak to us on camera, but some did express their fears of ever letting their children out from under their jurisdiction again.
Denise Milner was one of 3 little girls who would never make the trip home.
She was in a hurry to do everything. She loved people. She was really outgoing. She wanted to be a part of everything.
And in 1977, that included going to Camp Scott for a 2-week stay. Denise sold cookies to raise money to get to camp. The idea was exciting until it came time to leave.
When she said she didn't want to go, I told her that just get someone to call us. We will come and get you. You don't have to stay. And I said, but I think you should go ahead and try it.
Betty Milner says for 40 years, those words have replayed in her head a million times, along with the unspeakable details of what happened to her daughter.
They were beaten, molested, and then carried by their assailant 150 yards away, where their bodies were found early this morning by camp counselors.
During the early morning hours of June 13, 1977, Denise and 2 other girls, Lori Farmer and Michelle Goose, were brutally assaulted and murdered. The murder sparked a massive manhunt. For nearly a year, there was nothing. Then finally, police said they had their man.
Jean Leroy Hart first became known as a football star in Locust Grove High School, but after getting out of school, he later went into jail, charged with rape.
Hart was a familiar character to police. At the time of his arrest, he'd been on the run since escaping prison in 1973. They found him hiding in a cabin in Cherokee County.
And a shackled Jean Leroy Hart was escorted to the state prison in McAllister by a contingent of law officers.
As the case reached the courtroom, Hart was an easy villain, given his criminal history. But others called him a convenient patsy for police under pressure to solve the case.
We are not going live at this point. We are simply rolling tape. Prepare for Mr. Hart to walk in.
At one point, Hart sat down with reporters. He talked about his Cherokee roots, his daily rituals, and his belief he was framed because he was Native American.
Maybe I represent fears and doubts that many people have about any system that has the means and the power to overwhelm each of us, each and every one of us.
The trial was a grueling, heated, month-long ordeal.
To many, Hart was the obvious killer, but the case wasn't so clear-cut during the trial, and the jury returned with a stunning verdict: not guilty. Jim Cavalier says he might have been on that jury. Instead, he had a front-row seat to the tragedy. He lived right behind Camp Scott, and still does.
It just turns your life upside down because there's no peace, no quiet. I mean, the quiet and everything leaves. It's total anxiety from that point on.
Why do bad things happen?
Nancy Fleming has memories too. Nancy's friend Denise Milner asked her to come along to Camp Scott, and she would have been there, probably in the same tent as Denise, if she hadn't made the critical error of sassing her father and got grounded.
You know, I do remember her funeral. I remember going to her funeral because that was the first one I'd ever been to, you know.
I looked directly in Nancy's eyes, and she was sitting there crying.
Hart was never tried again for the crimes. He died in prison on unrelated charges, a few months after being found innocent of the Girl Scout murders. Was he the killer? Betty Milner says only God knows for sure.
It was my prayer, because I do believe in God, that justice would be served regardless, and that the crime was too horrible for man to serve justice.
Next to her photos of Denise, an even greater treasure: a letter from her daughter, the last one she will ever get.
They all wrote letters home to their parents that night.
In a 10-year-old's cursive, Denise wrote to Mom about the first night at camp. She mentioned her roommates, the storm that had rolled in, and that she wanted to come home.
I'm not sure I understand what people mean by closure, because to me, all I know and think about is she's still dead, and the things that happened to her still happen, no matter what the law decides.
No true healing, but time has mended pieces of Milner's heart.
She was 10 there.
Yet it's still broken. Just another casualty of the ugly crimes that happen beneath this beautiful canopy that still holds secrets. We told you a member of the Channel 8 family was touched by this story. That's Nancy Fleming, who got grounded by her dad and missed going to Girl Scout camp. That's just another way this 40-year-old case is very real to us. In the Update Center, Maureen Wirtz, Tulsa's Channel 8.
Maureen, thanks. For a complete look at our archives, go to K2L.com.